to another episode of Making Mindset Matter, the podcast all about all things mindset and personal development with me, your host, Lorna McKenna. If you haven't already done so, then please do click the subscribe button so you can be notified when there is another episode. But that being said, we're going to get into episode number 2. And the topic for today is progress over perfection. And this is a topic that on my personal growth journey is something that I have learned the importance of, that it's not perfection we are striving for, it is progression. So I'm just going to dive into why we should focus on progress and not perfection, and some of the reasons why we think things need to be perfect when actually they don't, because what is perfection? And I'll dive into that a little bit deeper. There is a quote by Hal Elrod from The Miracle Morning which says, personal growth is about progress and not perfection. And when I realised this concept, it was like a light bulb moment, that it is not perfection that I'm striving for, it is progression. Just like it's not perfection that you should be should be striving for, it is progression. Because what is perfect? What is perfectionism? And we sit there and think that we can't do this because it needs to be perfect. I'll use the podcast as an example again. You probably get me bored of using this podcast. I sat and waited, like I said in the first episode, because I feared doing it. I mean, in fact, thinking that things needed to be perfect. I needed the perfect name, the perfect this, the perfect that. When really all I needed to do was just take action and just getting it out there. I can perfect it along the way. I can learn and I can grow. So personal growth or any journey is about progress, because we should be striving for that. It's about focusing on being that. If you've read The Compound Effect, which if you haven't, is one of the most amazing, simple concepts of a book by Darren Hardy, and I would highly recommend it. It's probably in my top 5 books, it's The Compound Effect. He said we should focus on being 1% better every day, and that 1% over a year is tenfold to what it could be. I can't remember the exact figure, but it's just about that focus on just progressing each day and not worrying about anything else. Just focus on being that 1% better each day, and the results will compound over time. So I thought I'd dig into a bit about what is perfectionism. And one thing that I've learned on my journey is that perfectionism is just an excuse not to take any action, because we sit there thinking, I've sat there, and I'm sure if you think about it, you've sat there thinking everything needs to be perfect to start something, but it doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to take the action and just start and sort of figure out the rest along the way, and just sort of have trust in that process. What is perfectionism though? What does perfect mean to you? And I think it's something that when I sit and think what is perfect, in my eyes, there's no such thing, because there's always room for continuous improvement. I personally am not striving for perfection anymore. I mean, I think there's times in my life I thought I'm probably near perfect. No, I'm joking. No, I'm not joking. Is it times you joke? Well, I'm not far off perfectionism, but it's not perfectionism that I want. It's progression, because if I'm progressing, it means I am constantly growing, I am constantly learning, I am constantly evolving. So if you're progressing, you are constantly growing, you are constantly learning, and you are constantly evolving. And it doesn't matter what journey you're on, whether that be a personal growth, it's a business you're starting. All these journeys are about our growth and about us becoming a better version of ourselves. And I spoke in my first episode about the fear of failure and why we should embrace failure, because it teaches so much. And I'm just going to touch on that. So if you haven't listened to the episode on just feeling the fear and doing it anyway, listen to episode 1, and I discuss that in more detail about fear. But perfectionism, actually, when you look at it, is a mask of a fear of failure, because we think that everything needs to be perfect to start something, but really it's because we're scared of failing. Can't even get my words out today on this episode. I do apologise, but this is me. You'll get used to me mumbling along. Anyway, back to it. So yeah, perfectionism is the fear of failure. It's just masked. We mask perfectionism in the fact that we're fearing to fail something, to fail to do something, or something's not going to quite work out. But failure is an incredible thing. And this is a realisation that I had. I used to fear failure so much, but that's because when I was in that mindset that I saw failure as a negative trait to have, oh, no one wants to fail. But I've seen the analogy online of failure is first attempt in learning, and when you adopt that sort of growth mindset and realise that actually to embrace failure for what it is, which failure is an opportunity to grow, it's an opportunity to learn, and it's an opportunity to change. So if you're not failing, you're not having opportunities to grow. And when you think of it like that, it's just like, wow, that is like, to me, is a mind-blowing concept, because failure is important. It's an important part of every journey, and they say that winners and losers have the same goals, but the winner just failed and just went one more time, whether someone that like lost or give up has quit because they failed and they didn't see it as an opportunity of where was the next move and where can they go next. And that is the importance of progression. It's about looking at an opportunity and looking at what is your next step, not what the end goal is. What is the next step? What is the next move that you can take in order to progress forward? And perfectionism, again, is just actually a form of inaction, because we sit and like procrastinate around like an idea thinking that it needs to be perfect, when actually we're just not taking the action. And it's when we take the action that we make progress. So really, like, perfectionism is actually a form of inaction. And like I said in the first episode, when we don't take any action, we feed the fear, it waters, it grows, and then we start to doubt ourselves and we fear failure again. So you can see how it's all linked. So that's why it's so important with mindset to realise that it's not perfection that we're going for, it's progression. And that when we actually take the action and we do make mistakes and we do slip up, to embrace it for what it is, to embrace the opportunity that I have failed. I am happy that I have failed, because what can I learn from this? What is an area of growth, and what can I change in order to move forward? And I think, like I said previously, like when you can embrace that as the beautiful opportunity that it is, you realise that I don't want perfection, I want progression. So how am I moving forward? What are my opportunities to go forward? And what is the action that I need to take next in order to help me progress further? So I'm just going to go through like my 3 top tips to why we should strive for progress over perfection. And I'm going to just go through it. So top tip number 1 is, I say top tips, but the 3 reasons why we should strive for progress over perfection even. I mean, if I was going for perfection, I'd be re-recording this, but I fumble my words, so it's not going to be re-record. You're just going to get me in my authentic form. Word fumbles a lot. So my 3 reasons why you should strive for progress over perfection is, number 1, we cannot reach our goals first time. We set out to reach a goal. If we hit it first time, amazing. But if we don't, it's because we need to learn, because it's not about the goal in the end. It's about the person that we become to bring the goal alive. Who do we need to become? And we might not know that at first when we set off out on a journey towards a goal. But the goal is like the North Star. It's just like a guiding point. And it's just a guide to where we need to be. But what we actually need to focus on is who can we embody to bring that goal alive, and what is the habits, what are the traits, who do we need to show up as? And we can't do that if we're searching for perfectionism, because we wouldn't see any opportunity for growth. We would just think we hit our goal and that's it. And when you get out of that mindset of being a learner, like being the learner, being like, one not out that like beginners like learner mindset. I don't think is learner even a word. Yeah, learner's a word. Beginner mindset, and you want to constantly think that, constantly improve. That's where you grow the most. So that's reason number 1, is we can't always reach our goals first time, and that is fine, because it gives us an opportunity to see who we need to become to bring that goal alive. The number 2 is mistakes are actually our best friends, because we need to make mistakes. Like I said, mistakes may be failures, they may just be things that we slip up on, but they are opportunities for us to grow, learn and change. They help us actually get clearer on our goals, on what it is we actually want. So if we're not making mistakes, we can't see areas for improvement, and it's that continuous improvement that we want, which is why we want the progression. It's for that continuous development. life is one big journey. We are constantly like progressing in something, and you don't want to become stagnant, and you want to be striving to just continuously better yourself, continuously achieve more, or just live life how you want to live it. And that is progression. And that's why making mistakes help us get clear on what it is that we want. And it's not just about goal setting. It can be in any walk of life, whether that be relationships, with friendships, with work, or anything. Even in the gym, or we try something, it's a mistake, we realise it's not what we want, but what can we learn from it? What is this situation showing me? What is it that I'm getting more clear on? So that's why number 2 is mistakes are actually our best friend, and they're your best friend, they're my best friend, and it's important to make them, so then we have the opportunity to learn, grow and change. Number 3 is that perfectionism is actually a form of procrastination, and I touched a little bit on this earlier in the episode, and this is so true, because when we are thinking things need to be perfect, we're procrastinating from the action that we need to take. So we're doing these tiny little minute details that are actually completely irrelevant from the main thing that we're trying to achieve, and detracts from it. Because it might be that you want to make a logo, or the colour's slightly off, so you spend 3 days because of the colour, the slightly, I don't know, I'll use my logo, the slight shade of yellow is wrong. When actually it doesn't matter, because does that affect the podcast going on? No, it doesn't. It can be changed. And I think when you think about it, that perfectionism, like, it's just a way that we disguise procrastination, because we're not taking the big leaps of action that will actually move us forward. We're focused on these minute details that are actually very insignificant, and they're just excuses, and then we don't take the action that we need, so we're not progressing forward, because we disguise it with perfectionism, which is just us procrastinating in another form. So they're like the 3 reasons why I believe that we should strive for progress over perfection. It's because, 1, we can't reach our goals first time, because we need to work out who we need to become. We need to work out who the version of us that can bring our goals alive. If we can't reach them first time, we need to look at, like, where do we need to change, where do we need to adapt. And that's why number 2, mistakes are our best friends, because they provide us opportunities to get clear on what it is that we actually want. And number 3 was perfectionism is actually a form of procrastination, which I think is the most like hard-hitting one for me. That realisation that actually it's just another form of procrastination is perfectionism, and there's no such thing as perfection. Our only competition is the us of yesterday versus the us of today. And I think when you get into that mindset that we shouldn't be competing against anybody else other than becoming better than we was the day before. And it's about that journey, about getting that 1% better every single day. And that's why we should be striving for progress. Progression is key. If we're not progressing, we're not growing, we're not learning. And that's why we should be striving for progression over perfection. So I would love to hear from you on what your biggest takeaway was from this episode about actually striving for progression and not for perfection, because I know I've been guilty in the past of wanting perfection, but there's no such thing as perfection. What is perfection, like I said at the start? But I would love to hear from you, like, what your biggest takeaway is, and you can find me on Instagram at Lorna McKenna with an _, and I would love to hear from you about what your biggest takeaway from this episode was. And like I said at the beginning, if you haven't already done so, please do click the subscribe or the follow button so you can be notified when I bring another episode out. But again, thank you so much for taking your time to listen to me. I do appreciate it. So like I said, just remember, progress over perfection every time. And here is to making your mindset truly matter.